What's up guys, welcome back to Deck Tech for Decks. I'm your host Caleb. Today I'm going to be convincing you that Ygra Enchantments is actually broken. Whether I'm doing that and gaslighting you or it's actually true is going to be up to you, but without further ado, let's shout out those patrons and get right into it. Newsome and Irrelevant, you guys rock. Now, why Ygra Enchantments? That doesn't look like it has any synergy at all, and you're kind of right until you realize that we are also going to be building this deck around Lysaga, and enchantments are just super cheap and have an insane value engine that is very easy to generate in these colors. I'll get onto that later in the video, but let's talk about Lysaga. Lysaga simply says, hey, tapper, you sacrifice 3 permanent typings and you can sacrifice up to 3 things, and then you draw 3 cards, drain your opponents by 3, and gain 3 life. Now, with Ygra on the battlefield and the fact that we're playing enchantment creatures, all we have to do is sacrifice 1 thing instead of 3 different things to get her trigger. So now we're playing a lot of enchantment creatures that are also artifacts due to our commander, and this is where the synergy comes into play. Now, notably, whenever you're building a secret commander deck, you should have the deck be able to win without ever finding your secret commander, and I've done that here. So she's just going to amplify the deck, but she's not really needed to win the game, and if you never find her, the deck is still going to function. But moving on, let's talk about more reasons why I went with the enchantment strategy. First of all, it's very easy to generate enchantment value engines in these colors. I mean, let's just talk about us having a way to draw a card whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield, and there's a ton of them. There's also a ton of ones that say, hey, draw a card whenever you cast an enchantment, right? So now we have insane value engines built into the deck, and then we can amplify that by including cards like Chthonian Nightmare and Shigeki. These are 2 cards that actually return themselves to our hand. So now, as long as we have one of the very many ways to draw cards whenever we cast or enchantments enter the battlefield, and we have Shigeki or Chthonian Nightmare, 2 very powerful cards in this deck, we've got an insane value engine with just 2 cards. Something to think about, and that's another reason that leaned me into choosing enchantments. Another thing that leaned me into choosing enchantments is there is actually a ton of mill enchantments that are very impactful, such as your Ripples of Undeath and Cemetery Tampering. I didn't just cheat to look and read the cards. That didn't happen, all right? Moving on, those cards are just going to mill our key pieces into our graveyard, and then we can use something like Shigeki to get them back, and boom, we've got our Lysaga on the battlefield and value engine generated. Another card that bolsters why I chose enchantments for this strategy is Nantuko Husk. We can very easily enchant an enchantment creature with this, or bestow the Nantuko Husk onto an enchantment creature, right? And now whenever a land enters the battlefield, boom, we get a token copy of that creature, so it's going to be more fodder for Lysaga. It's going to trigger all of our cards that care about enchantments entering the battlefield, and then additionally on the Ygra side of things, we're running cards like Kinkerbloom. So if we bestow Kinkerbloom, now every time a land enters the battlefield, we get another Kinkerbloom that we can easily sacrifice to get rid of our opponent's key pieces, which is going to be absolutely insane. And this is kind of going to lean into the Ygra synergies that we're going to talk about later on in this deck. Right now we're talking about enchantments, all right? Now let's get on to Lysaga herself. This card wants a lot of expensive cards. Let's be honest. All the things that untap creatures to allow them to tap again go infinite easily, and they are expensive cards, especially this one, you know, the one that would be perfect for Lysaga, because whenever you sacrifice a creature, you get to untap Lysaga. But again, we can't be using that here, and I understand why. So we're gonna have to do it jank. We're gonna have to be really clever with how we pull this off. So yeah, I decided to not do that, and we're gonna use Chthonian Nightmare loops instead, because that's way better. Let's use Hydrax Tower Scout and then any other, you know, very cheap creature. Hydrax Tower Scout does have a 3 CMC, so it works perfectly with our Chthonian Nightmare loops here. Now we do need a creature that taps for mana, and we need that mana to equal 5, right? Because we actually want to gain mana on this interaction. Now there's 2 creatures in this deck that can already do that, but if you guys want to spend a little more money and include Selvala, Heart of the Wilds, she's also going to be very good for this synergy. The first thing you're going to want to do is loop Hydrax Tower Scout with any other creature, and then you're going to untap those mana dorks that tap for 5 mana. This will essentially gain you 1 mana every time you loop those 2 creatures in and out of your graveyard. Notably, there are other cards that just win you the game if you get this off without even needing Lysaga, but the first goal of the deck, generate your infinite mana, right? Go ahead and do that. And then once you've generated your infinite mana, all you're going to need to do is choose Baba Lysaga now instead of untapping your other creatures. You use Chthonian Nightmare to go ahead and reanimate the creatures you need. Now that you have infinite mana, you don't have to worry about anything else. So as long as you've got creatures to reanimate, you can just keep untapping your Baba Lysaga, sacrificing a creature, drawing more cards, casting more creatures, and then, you know, you're able to sacrifice those creatures to Baba Lysaga again because the Hydrax Tower Scout is still untapping them. And yeah, you're ready to go. You're off to the races, and you've drawn your entire deck in a budget list. Let's talk about another interaction that is just not okay in this deck. We have Insidious Roots, Tortured Existence, and we have Tyvar. Not only are these all very synergistic in the deck because Tyvar can untap your Baba Lysaga and your mana dorks, Insidious Roots just generates more mana dorks, and we are constantly putting creatures in and out of the graveyard, and then Tortured Existence gets our key creatures out of the graveyard into our hand, right? So they're all amazing in the deck by themselves, and then you put them together and you can generate infinite creatures, infinite mana, and infinite power. Now notably, you probably do want to do this on an end step because it doesn't generate infinite power till you untap all of your creatures. Let me explain. What you're going to do is you have all three of these on the battlefield and at least one creature in your hand and one creature in the graveyard. You go ahead and tap a Sapperling to generate black, and then boom, you go ahead and swap those creatures in and out and you generate another Sapperling. Then since Tyvar's on the battlefield, that has haste, and you can go ahead and do that again. That generates a loop where you can generate infinite Sapperlings, and then remember, Insidious Root is putting counters on all of these Sapperlings, and then boom, you're gonna untap and win the game. Kind of crazy. Now, again, this is 3 cards in the deck that you can't reliably tutor for. You can tutor for some of them, but again, I just wanted to point out this interaction because it's kind of busted. Now, let's talk about how we are getting our Baba Lysaga in the graveyard and then onto the battlefield, because if this is a secret commander deck, we do need to be able to search for her reliably. That way we can bring this deck up to a 12 instead of just trying to win without her. We have our Graveblake Limia that can find us any card, so it can even find us the key pieces we need to get our engine online. Then we have Lively Dirge. Again, not only can this put any card into the bin, but additionally it reanimates cards. And then we have Buried Alive, which puts several cards into the bin. Awesome, because we can grab our Baba Lysaga and our Hydrax Tower Scout and something else like our Mana Dork, right? So now we've got 3 of the 5 things we need to get our Root Goldward machine online. Now that I've hopefully convinced you that pairing Ygra with enchantments is extremely broken, let's get on to the Ygra staples that I think were important to include in this deck. First, we have Meren of Clan Toth. She goes absolutely insane with any of our Kinkerbloom effects, because Kinkerbloom sacrificed itself to go ahead and destroy an artifact. All of our opponent's creatures are artifacts, so that's incredibly backbreaking for our opponents, and then Meren's just going to bring them right back onto the battlefield. And not to mention, it can grab all of our other key pieces that we are additionally milling. The next thing that's very important is your Vraska and Gisa effects. Now, whenever we're destroying our opponent's creatures, we get them on our side of the battlefield, just adding to the backbreaking portion of this deck. Another thing that I think is very important in the Ygra strategy is Liquid Metal Torque. This is going to make it to where we can turn anything into an artifact, and then we have a plethora of ways to get rid of artifacts in this deck, so it's just going to add to the versatility, and we're going to be able to get rid of any permanent that is causing us issues. Last but not least, we have Viridian Revels. Viridian Revels is absolutely insane in this deck, because now whenever anything dies, basically, as long as it's a creature or artifact, and again, that's the majority of these casual decks, we're going to be drawing a ton of cards. Moving on, I just want to end on a couple miscellaneous cards that I think are really funny in this deck. We have Farika, which is oddly perfect for this strategy. We can exile a card, and then we get an enchantment snake creature that again will be an artifact in addition to its other types. So now we get a way to generate tokens that are all 3 typings for our Baba Lysaga. Additionally, we're running Destiny Spinner. Also very good in this strategy because it reanimates a creature. That creature is going to be an enchantment in addition to its other types. It's also a land. Now it's a creature and an artifact. So again, we can sacrifice a land and easily trigger our Baba Lysaga. With that being said, I have a question for you guys. How do you like this format versus the formats I've done in the past, right? Usually I just get rid of my my face. I talk about every single card in the deck, or almost every single card, explain why I put it in the deck. Here, I'm going over the interactions, the key pieces, what I want the deck to do, and what I was thinking while I was building it. So if you guys want to comment in this comment section down below which format you want to see in the future, if you want me to go back to the old format, if you're loving this new format, if I'm crazy and I can't stick on script because I'm not reading it, I need to know that as well. So with that being said, I asked that question to you guys. Please let me know. I really need some feedback. And yeah, let's shout out those patrons. Newsome, Excessum, Irrelevant, Creator, and Chicken Salad. You guys are amazing. I hope this helped you guys in your deck building endeavors, and I will see you in the next one.